I think anyone that sees this is probably in a situation where they have some level of consumer debt, especially if you're in the United States. I think it's a global problem now. And if you don't, that's amazing. And congratulations and kudos to you. Don't don't start racking up debt. And when I say consumer debt, that's credit cards, or I think an auto payment would fall into that. Mortgage would not fall into that because there's buying property or buying a house is a good idea. That's not a terrible kind of debt. It can be a very good debt to have. But when it comes to consumer debt, that's credit cards or personal loans or pay over time loans like Affirm and Klarna and all these other types of companies or whatever it is. But it's no mystery that most people in the United States are in a crazy amount of debt, or they're in debt that exceeds their total net worth in terms of assets. If you line up their cash versus their debt, they're negative and they're in the hole. And that's a big problem. And it's a big problem from a macro scale, but more so if you go very micro to the individual person. I think a lot of the I think a main reason that a lot of people are so unhappy nowadays is because of their consumer debt. And I don't know how other people feel about it, but for me, it's something I've struggled with for a long time, and I'm not totally out of it myself, but it's something that I feel like somebody else always owns my soul. When I have debt, I always feel like there's somebody else with claim to my soul, and I can't wait until I'm at a point where I have nothing left to pay off, nothing left that I owe to anybody or any organization or any bank or whatever, which thankfully I feel like I'm getting pretty close now. But it's something that is it for most people. I think it gnaws away at them. It's just in the back of their head, and it's something that a lot of people don't realize is eating away at them. If there's some people who deny it or some people who say it doesn't bother them, but I think on some level it's there. I think it's something that bothers most people. And I was thinking about what I've done in my life when I have not had any debt and been able to stay out of debt. And these things sound and they seem very obvious, but I think it's something that most people need to hear. And the three things that I've learned and try to implement on a regular basis to ensure that I don't rack up a bunch of debt and stay out of debt and can feel like, I my soul is mine, my time is mine. I'm not working to pay off the past or anything like that, is first and foremost, as obvious as it sounds, it's the obvious truth that nobody wants to hear, but your debt goes away when you spend less than you make. Depending on how much you have, if you're in a lot of debt, you have no choice but to spend less than what you're making. And whatever is in excess or in between that amount, you can go towards paying off your debt. Um, but that's it. There's no hack, there's no trick, there's nothing else there's no two ways about it. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only number that matters. And if you want to get out of debt, you have to spend less than what you're earning. And depending on how big the debt is, that could be by a wide margin, and that might mean you need to make lifestyle changes, downgrading a car or where you live or hobbies or whatever it is, wherever the money is going. But at the end of the day, the most obvious truth is the most effective one, which is your debt will go away when you're spending less than what you're earning. Like when you spend less than what you make and you keep paying it down, then you will eventually pay off your debt if you're being smart and putting your money there. And the reason that I brought that up is because that's something I had to push into my head. It's embarrassing how long it took me to understand that. Because I would pay off debt, then I would be in debt again, or I would rack it up and I'd get frustrated. And I would always think I need to earn more money. And it's like, well, if I earned enough that I could always just pay off my credit cards or pay off whatever loans or whatever I had, then I would never have to worry about this. But the fact of the matter is, it's not about how much you're making, it's about how much you're spending and the fact that you just have to stop yourself from spending. Because most of the stuff you're spending it on is probably crap. It's probably junk that you don't need. Um, and it's difficult because it's very simple, but it remains difficult because you spend more without even realizing it. And when I talk about all this, I should preface it by saying I'm talking about things that we don't need, like things in excess, things that we spend money on for fun, or things that we could just cut back on without sacrificing quality of life. Because I know that right now, it's February 2026, a lot of people are struggling because the necessities and the basics are way too expensive. Rent is crazy. Auto insurance in California is crazy. Gas is insane. So I'm not talking about those things, and I'm not criticizing spending habits around that. But um, outside of those things, I think people can still be more careful with how they spend their money, with where their money goes, and how strict they are, uh, and whether how much they can tighten their belt, so to speak. And it is difficult because everything around us is pushing us to spend. And it does it in a way where you don't even realize that you're doing it. There's lifestyle creep that happens once a little bit of money comes in. There is social pressure. There's instant gratification. There's also this constant fear mongering going on with the news and the media. And a lot of people use spending to escape that. So ultimately, it is your responsibility, but I will say, or it's our responsibility, but I will say that it is a very challenging thing. Like, this is a hard thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do by any means. And like anything else, it's a skill that you develop over time. So um, it comes down to moment by moment, stopping yourself when you need to stop yourself. Um, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And the more you start to pick up on, oh, this is this is lifestyle creep, or if you're feeling social pressure to go out when you promised yourself that you wouldn't, then you understand when that's happening and you remember to put your foot down. And, you do that over time and you'll get to a point where you will start to hold on to more of your money and be in a position where you will be able to work down your debt and be able to start saving the money. So it is tough, but it's a simple thing, but it is very tough, and it does require some sacrifice. And I think the practical shift that helped me a lot is when you're going through this season or this time in your life where you're saying that I'm going to work down this debt and I'm going to completely pay it off. I think two things are really important. One is to have the priority in mind, but you don't but understand that you don't need to sacrifice everything. Because if you hold yourself down and deprive yourself of everything, you might snap back and go in the total opposite direction and end up spending way more than you should be spending, and then go deeper into debt. And the other thing, along those lines, it's also important that you give yourself some room to enjoy yourself, because a life without joy is gonna, you're gonna start to wonder why you're doing any of it. It might not become worth it at that point. Mentally, you might trick yourself into thinking this isn't even worth it, because if I don't see my friends, or I don't go out and enjoy myself, and I don't do anything, and just so I can pay off this debt, then by the time I'm done with it, I'm not gonna, what's the situation gonna be? So I think that it's important to have a balance in that sense. But the second part of the practical reframe is that when you go to buy something outside of essentials, you ask yourself, do I want this, or do I need this, or do I want this? And you really stop and ask yourself and try to hold yourself accountable and say, well, like, do I really need this? Will this really improve my life? Is this something that's really I'm going to actually enjoy? And most of the time the answer to that question is no. If it's something that you need and you actually need, then go for it. There's no reason that you shouldn't buy the things that you need. But if you find yourself doing that a lot, if you find yourself spending money on a lot of things that you realize you don't need, then you could make a pretty significant shift in your identity by stopping yourself from buying those things or spending money recklessly. And I think a good reframe is also that instead of telling yourself that you're depriving yourself of this thing right now, you say, I'm not saying no to this, I'm saying yes to being debt free. And this whole thing is also not something you do for the rest of your life. right? This is a time where you shift your habits um, until the debt is gone, until you have a certain amount of savings, until you delay gratification to a certain point and you shift your habits, and hopefully those habits stay with you long enough that even after the debt is gone, you're able to save more of your money and keep yourself in a good spot financially. um, and as you do that, you'll get to a point where you will just, I think, generally feel a lot better. And you also kind of just you shift your identity to the point where you, by the end of it, you'll probably be someone entirely new. And by the time you are out of it, you'll be so grateful that you stuck with this, that um, you're less likely to end. You'll be less likely to end up in debt again. You'll be more appreciative of the habits that you built, and you'll just change overall to a point where your identity will shift to someone who's not even going to be in debt again. So those are a couple different things that I've realized as I've gone through this. From my teen years even to being an adult, where I was making the same bad decisions and bad choices, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around why I was doing this. Why was I doing the thing that I didn't want to do, or why was I making the decisions that put me on the same path as before? That's the same path that led me down a road that I didn't want to go to, like before. And it took really sitting down and analyzing and understanding on a mechanistic level, day to day, how I ended up in those situations. Because for me, it wasn't anything big. It wasn't like big ticket items or big purchases. It was just like swiping the card left and right here and there, not really thinking like, hey, this is racking up and up and up and up and up. And it's crazy how fast the little things stack up. I think that's what happens for most people. It's not that people spend a lot of money on a lot of big things. I think most people just keep buying small stuff, like a meal here, a meal there, getting snacks or getting something, you know, while you're out, not planning ahead and then eating out, whatever it is, just kind of little things like that. I think most people spend a lot of money on food, and that stacks up rather quick. And then next thing you know, you had paid off your credit card, and now it's sitting at $800-900, or maybe 1,000 or a couple thousand, and the interest will kill you on that. So I think just sitting there and understanding where the specific habits and the specific triggers that lead to those habits, which end up putting you in a bad position with consumer debt and credit cards or whatever it is. It's good to sit there and really analyze that and scrutinize that, and not just scrutinize the action itself of spending, but also it's like what triggers that action, what triggers you to to behave that way, or to go and seek out instant gratification or validation by spending money on something. And from there, just really like holding yourself down, and to a certain extent, there is a level of brute forcing that you have to do, where you just physically have to, not physically, but you have to emotionally really just stop yourself. And you have to stop yourself in those moments where you really want to go and do the thing that you know you shouldn't be doing. And that's never easy. And like really the only time it matters is when you really want to go do it and you're rationalizing it to yourself, and you hold yourself down, you stop yourself from doing it. So anyway, just a few things I thought I'd share that have helped me in my journey, and things that seem obvious, but I think the obvious things are usually the most. They're obvious, but they're also the most effective. So, the the simple thing with getting out of debt is you need to spend less than you earn. You need to be aware of social pressure, lifestyle creep, the little things that cause you to spend more and more money, and practically reframe it as anytime you're about to buy something, ask yourself, do I need this? Do I want this, or do I need this? And just give yourself some rules and some parameters so that you can still enjoy your life while working down this debt. So you don't totally lose yourself. And that way you can still have some enjoyment while also working toward this bigger goal, which in the long run will be worth more than probably everything you sacrifice to get to it. So hope that helps. Best of luck.